Hello, everyone. My name's Denise, and I am the digital media manager with Lo Schiavo Genealogica. Welcome to this Q&A with Melanie Holtz, the owner and operator of Lo Schiavo Genealogica. Welcome, Melanie.
Thank you, Denise. How is everyone today?
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
Good, thank you.
Great. So I'm super excited because this is the first episode of several episodes where we're going to be talking about Melanie's book right here, The Family Tree Italian Genealogy Guide. This is available for purchase. So if anything in here in our conversation is like, ooh, that's something very interesting, either purchase the book or you can set up a free discovery call with Melanie if you want to talk with her about your specific genealogy adventures. All right, so we're going to jump right in. And now we're going to get a sense of how this all got started, Melanie, in this adventure of genealogy, Italian genealogy. Can you share a little bit of your story with us and our viewers? As what prompted you to pursue this?
Well, I wasn't raised within my Italian family, so I really came to know them in my 20s. And it was something that was completely foreign to me, initially, as I was raised in a Pennsylvania Dutch family, and which is an entirely different type of culture. But, basically, I was adopted out of my Italian family, and I found my birth mother in my early 20s, and she is half Italian. So through her and her family, we started researching our ancestors, and that is what really pushed me forward into doing research. First, I was doing my own. And then I was in the family history library, or the family history center, so often people started to guide people towards me to answer Italian questions. And then it got to the point where I was spending most time helping other people. And I decided to do it professionally.
Gotcha.
And I worked about 8 years on the side, holding a full-time job also. Until I could go full-time in my business. And we work not only with Italian genealogy research, but also Italian dual citizenship.
Gotcha. And you've been doing this for about 20 years now.
Yes, about 20 years.
Wow.
You're kind of maybe about 22 now.
Wow. Mm-hmm. So what prompted you to write this book?
Well, I was approached by Family Tree. They wanted someone to write a book about all aspects of Italian genealogy. So I was very honored to do that. And the book came out fantastic. I'm really proud of it. And, there are particular sections that there was really a lack of information, or at least clear information out there on particular subjects. There are other Italian genealogy books. But in some subjects, such as military records and such as Italian census records, in particular, it was very hard to find information about them, complete information. It was just scattered all over the place. So I worked really hard on those sections in particular, as well as really the whole book. But in order to provide a complete resource on those subjects.
Yes, it is chock full of information, and we're going to be putting pieces of this out on blogs, in video conversations, so folks can really dig into it out of their curiosity or their own projects to do their own research. What would you say are the recommended first steps if someone's starting their own research? Where would you recommend they start?
Oh, you should start with your own relatives. You would be surprised what people have, hidden in the closet. So you start with your oldest relatives. anyone who might have remembered the immigrants or remember what they said to them about where they came from, maybe what their lives were like before they came to America or Canada or wherever they emigrated. And oftentimes you can find even an old passport, an old military discharge paper. Sometimes other documents that actually show what town in Italy that they came from. And that is really important when you're doing research, because nearly all records in Italy are conserved at the town level. So if you don't know the town, it's really difficult to move your research forward.
Okay. How important is it to set goals?
If you don't set goals, I think if you don't set goals and also record your results each step of the way, I think you're going to just be redoing your work over and over. Yeah, because you can't sit down and just research your ancestry back to the 15th century in one sitting. Even if the records are right there online, it's not going to happen. Mm-hmm. So it's really important that you record what you're trying to do, what your results were for this particular thing, and just build on it. So, you're going to look for your great-grandparents' marriage record. And then once you find that, you have their parents' names and their parents' ages. So then you go for their parents' birth records. So you just build on that as you do the research.
So there are 3 different kinds of genealogical sources. There's authored works versus records, original versus derivative records, and primary versus secondary versus indeterminable information. Can we just touch on each kind? Can you explain and define what those are so our viewers have a sense of what each are?
Sure. Well, let's start with authored works and records. So authored works would be, say, a family history book. It would be a compilation of naturalization records from the 1800s done by a historical society back in 1962. That's an authored work. So it's going to be a book or, something along that line. It can also be something published on the internet, because putting something on the internet is publishing. If it has, citations, if it has where this information came from, it's probably a good source. But you have to think about an authored work means the accuracy of the author. You don't know how accurate that author was. Mm-hmm. So I have, on my other side of my family from West Virginia, there's a very detailed history of the Bear Wallow Valley, as part of my ancestors came from there in West Virginia. But there's no sources. And, I've found quite a bit of it to be wrong. So you have to be careful with that, because you don't know, how good the person putting it together was in doing genealogy.
Okay.
And then a record is like a document. So we're talking a birth record, a death record, baptismal certificate, that sort of thing.
Okay. And when it comes to original versus derivative, what's the difference there?
So an original record would be like a birth record created at the time of the event by people who participated in the event. A derivative would be transcriptions of baptismal records created in 1972 for this parish, for 500 years of such and such a parish in Italy. So basically they're transcribing, pulling the information from the original records and creating a new source, a derivative source for that information.
Okay.
And everyone can make an error. Even just looking at something and then writing it down on another piece of paper, as good as you are. Anyone can make an error.
Yeah.
And there have been a lot of genealogical problems solved by people going back to the original record and not using the derivative work because there are errors in the derivative work.
So I'm guessing the best source is the original. I mean, you could
Always,
start with
the best source is the original.
to get some general sense of direction, but going and trying to find that original record is key.
Right. You can't always find it.
Yeah.
Because there are some jurisdictions who decided, okay, after we make this compilation, we're going to destroy the originals.
Oh, right.
And that just is horrible for me as a genealogist to even think that is a thought. But there were, town clerks here in the U.S. even who did that. They decided to create just a list of say land records, and then they destroyed all the property deeds, all the originals.
Wow.
And it's so yes, the original is always the best, but sometimes it can't be found. So you have to use a derivative work, keeping in mind that there could be errors. Sometimes you might have to find additional evidence to prove the theory that this is wrong. This record is wrong in the derivative work, and this is why. You may have to look elsewhere.
It sounds like a lot of detective work.
It is. That's pretty much what genealogy is. Detective work and finding documents, learning about people. It's social history. It's, history of families.
Yeah. So we have primary versus secondary versus interterminal. I think it's pretty self-explanatory. So, but can you just describe what that means?
Well, in each particular document, there are different types of information. And I'm going to take a Italian death certificate and use this as an example. So primary information is information that is what am I trying to say? It's information that completely answers the question at hand. So, for example, when was this Italian ancestor, when did he die? The date of death is going to be in that death certificate. So, and that date of death is recorded by the civil official in the process that they have. So that's going to be primary information.
Okay.
Now, information like who his parents were is going to be secondary information, because the process to record a death record in Italy was that just some neighbors or friends who lived on the same street would go and give the information for the death. But the priest did come and verify the actual date of death. So as far as the date is concerned, that's primary information. As far as the parents is concerned, that depended on how well that neighbor or friend knew the person, how well their memory was in the name of the parents, who were probably long dead themselves. So that's secondary information.
Okay.
And indeterminate is when you can't tell.
Okay.
So a lot of people don't understand the process behind Italian death certificates, and they really give the information in them too much strength when they're, looking at the value of the information or the evidence in them.
So it sounds to me that in many cases, getting a second or even third source to verify would be a step in the right direction as far as feeling confident about that information.
Right. And that's good genealogy research. You never rely on just one source of information.
Okay.
And you try not to completely rely on just a derivative source, like we talked about.
Okay.
So you try to find, information that was created at or near the time of the event.
Okay.
And, say a baptismal record was recorded 10 days after birth, then that's still, right there at the time of the event, because the person who brought them to the church was likely there, when the child was born, so they would know.
Mhm.
Sometimes there were midwives who waited until they had 10 children born, and then they would go and record all the births.
Oh, really?
And do the baptisms, especially when they lived in a countryside area outside of the town center.
Oh, wow. So some of the children could be like 10 years old?
No, 10 days, maybe 10 days.
I'm sorry.
They were supposed to do it within 14 days.
Oh, gotcha. Gotcha.
But say you're in the mountains of Puglia and it's snowing, it's February, they're going to wait to a good day and then go and record all of the births that happened.
Gotcha. Wow.
In instances like that, well, in most cases, they were supposed to bring the child so that the civil official could actually verify the gender.
Okay.
But sometimes with the midwives, they didn't bring it because it was just too far and too many kids to be toting.
Wow.
for recordation.
Wow, I learned something new every time we talk. Wow. So my final question for you is, what is a genealogical proof standard?
So the genealogical proof standard is basically the standard by which you should be researching. So you can find this on the website of the Board for Certification of Genealogists, and there are several points to it. And so you have to meet this genealogical proof standard, have done all of these different points to feel that your work is complete in answering this genealogical question.
Okay, great. Well, this has been very informative. I want to thank our viewers for joining us. As I mentioned at the top of this, we will be doing this periodically as we go through the book and pull out some key stuff for discussions here in this format. But I will include a link in the show notes in case folks who want to take a deeper dive and don't want to wait for future conversations and want to get working, you can purchase this book. So thank you so much, Melanie. It was great chatting with you.
Thank you.